Hello, my name is Miriam. I'm the president and founder of the club, The Journey Towards Healthy Living.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm the Executive Outreach Director of the club.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tess, and I am one of the committee members on Outreach.
Hello, everyone. I am Fiorel, and I'm also part of the committee for outreach at the club.
So just before we begin our podcast, I wanted to give an introduction to our club. The Journey Towards Healthy Living is a club that focuses on providing our audience with the information needed to lead a healthy lifestyle. Rather than just focusing on the nutritional aspect, we cover all facets of healthy living, such as mental health, physical health, your personal passions, and whatnot. So it's a club that's centered around providing you with scientific information to lead a better and healthy life.
So, the focus for today's episode is we're going to be focusing on mental and physical health during the pandemic.
I think probably the biggest thing about mental health in the pandemic is just the ability to hide the actual mental health. Um, I've had a little bit of that throughout the pandemic. I'm sure everyone else has as well. If anyone wants to comment on that.
Oh, definitely. It has, my mental health has definitely, declined over the course of the pandemic. I felt like from the start, like when I first got that, just got it in my head that we were going to be online back in March 2020. Honestly, I was a little bit excited at first because it was that initial shock. It was like something was going to be changed. And I honestly thought that life was going to be a lot easier after the switch to online because I thought, I was going to have more time for friends. School was going to be easier. But that just didn't happen. And once I realized that I wasn't actually going to be seeing my friends because, hello, it's a lockdown, yeah, things just things just declined from there. And one of those things was kind of like my happiness and my freedom.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. I think I thought the same thing. I thought during the pandemic would probably be easier for me as like being an introverted extrovert. I think it's probably the best way to describe myself. So I thought it was going to be a little bit easier for me, but it's definitely been really hard just to stay active and just have a positive mindset. It's not always been like down, and there's always ups and downs, right? But I mean, there's also like a lot of cues to see for mental health, just for yourself and also for people. So an easy cue, I think, for a lot of people is just once once the communication kind of stops and you start to see someone isolating themselves. I think that's a major cue that I think everyone kind of notices, but it's definitely one that needs a little bit more attention, I would say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's actually no, that is a good point. I'm happy that you bring that up because it's not just ourselves that we have to worry about. Like we're all in this together. Like we're all students going through really similar things, and I feel like it kind of saddens me that instead of sort of coming together and like talking about our feelings collectively as being isolated and being a little bit more unhappy and depressed, I feel like we're actually just in this by ourselves and we're not really looking out for those cues for like our friends and other people in our program, for example, that like they're actually just going through the exact same thing.
It's so easy just to like discommunicate yourself from everything. I think that's also like a major theme that I'm sure you've seen as well, right?
Oh, for sure. Like we're in our rooms, we're surrounded by our four walls, and I feel like we like not only that, we sort of just like lack the motivation to really just do anything else. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, also, well, yeah. I mean, it's also really hard to even get motivation as well. Being on social media every day is also kind of a negative. Being attached to your phones all the time is probably a huge negative. So it all comes with balance for sure. But I'm sure everyone else has something to talk about as well with that.
Yeah, so just like you guys said at the beginning, I thought that, oh, like I was exhausted with like in-person school. It was just like talking to people, trying to find a balance with everything, and exams were coming, and then it was announced that things were going online. So I was like, holy, thank you. And at first it was like that transition from in-person to online, like just caused things to slow down because nobody really knew how things were going to go about. But then as like the pandemic progressed, it seems like there was more work online than in person, and that takes a lot of your time. So when it comes to like finding time to like check on yourself and others, it there's barely any time to do any of that stuff. You feel yourself, you're always overwhelmed with school, and once you're not doing any work, you want to use that time to rest rather than go check on yourself or others. What do you guys think? Like, I feel that's something that has happened to me a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's huge, and that's not. I don't think that's limited at all to students. I think just like anyone that just works or like literally everyone's affected by this, and it's really hard to stay motivated. There's a lot of things that you can do for sure. I don't know if you guys started any new hobbies or anything throughout the pandemic just to keep yourself a little bit sane.
Yeah, I've like taken up painting and writing and like starting my own business to just keep myself like going because doing schoolwork all the time isn't the way to go. I feel like you'll start to fall into this rabbit hole, and as the work piles up, you'll just feel more and more less motivated to do it. So supplementing that time with your passions and doing things that you like is probably the key towards getting yourself through this pandemic.
Yeah, I think like a major thing, well, for me at least, that's hard throughout the school year. While like when I try to like I don't know, do any of my passions, like say if I want to go skating or if I want to go cooking, for me, I sometimes find that I don't have the time to actually do it. Well, of course I do, but it's hard to like kind of schedule those fun things in when you're always like focused on like just you're getting just buried by all your schoolwork or your work or just things you have to do, right? I don't know if you guys have any like schedule planning tips that you guys could share.
I am not a scheduler. And like that is something that I have to work on because I feel like I would definitely thrive off of some sort of structure, but the thing that I have against schedules is when they're being planned right down to the very last minute, like to the point where you're scheduling in your breaks or your meals. I think that just adds an extra layer of unnecessary rigidity, which can actually be a little bit unhealthy. So that's my that's my thing against schedules. But I think that definitely having some sort of structure to your day is important for getting the things that you need to get done.
Yeah, for me, it's been like I plan a lot of things to do throughout my day because I'm like basing my experience off of the one or two time in high school where I was able to like get a lot done by being extremely stressed out within a very small amount of time. So then I started like tricking myself like, oh, I have 8 hours. I can definitely get a lot done. And I'll make a huge list of things to get done. But then it'll like the end of the night will come and I've only accomplished like one and a half things. So I think the biggest tip here is to not overwhelm yourself. Just break it down into like one or two things, and then you'll feel more accomplished that way too, instead of just being like, oh, I can get this reading done, I can do this course and that course. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with both of you guys. So to touch back on what Tess was saying, just making a schedule for every minute of the day almost feels like a prison, and you have to like obey to these like weird rules that you made for every day, and it's not healthy at all. Actually, I read a paper about how you should schedule like free time if you're making a schedule that rigid, or making a schedule or making time out of the day for having something that's fun to do. Like it doesn't always have to be go 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 100% of the time. I think that probably leads to burnout, maybe mental health issues, just everything. And I think a lot of people kind of fall victim to that. Um, for me, I sometimes fall victim to that, but think at the end of the day, the major thing to always remember is not to be always like so hard on yourself. Everyone's so hard on themselves all the time. So I think everyone just needs to find a way to chill out.
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, that whole aspect about like forgiveness, like for yourself, especially during this time. We we really have nothing else to do during this lockdown but to sort of think about all the things that we're doing wrong and just criticizing ourselves constantly. And I think that's another thing that's really contributing to like a lack of mental health or poor mental health. So it's really easier said than done, but I think the best thing that you can do is to not be so hard on yourself. And one of the ways that you can do that is to give yourself free time, because that's just kind of sending the message out to yourself that, you know, you love yourself enough to like let yourself have fun. So I think that's really important.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was actually beautiful.
Aww.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just noticed something that we said in the like, past couple of minutes, that there's like there's kind of two outcomes. Like you're either too busy to take care of yourself, or you can have way too much time to think about the things you're doing wrong. So what you could do is just find balance between these two things. You can schedule let's say you can make up a schedule where you are giving yourself a realistic goal, but also enough time to do the things you want to do, and then like use that spare time to reward yourself. For example, sometimes I use that time to like as creative outlets where I can maybe just draw or do this stuff or play the guitar, or sometimes I just like talk to friends. But regardless, I use that spare time as kind of like to push myself through the work time and like, give myself like a balance of power and fun and all that.
Yeah. Also, I think it's probably easier to do work with something you like. Something that I've always followed kind of throughout my life is just do something you like, because I've done things I don't like and I've learned from it, and I know now that like I don't want to do that in the future or now. So that's kind of like my main goals. I think that's probably the best advice I could give anyone, is just do something you like, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, right?
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, Miriam and her small business that she started, that's awesome, by the way. And Theo, you know, you're taking up drawing and stuff. I don't know if that's something you've always done, but no.
No. I just started it like last summer when the lockdown first started, and it was fun going out and just drawing.
Yeah, exactly. See, those activities are just, you know, they'll keep you distracted and they'll keep you happy, and sometimes they keep you social too. I feel like, you know, we're not all of us are so lucky, and like because some of us have a lot more free time, it actually makes certain types of people a little bit more victim to substance abuse. And that's another thing that I've seen throughout the pandemic. Substance abuse levels have just completely skyrocketed.
Yeah, I've dealt with that kind of firsthand. Just people falling back into their poor ways, like for example, smoking or just anything. I mean, it's not their fault. Like it's really easy just to fall back into those ways when there's a pandemic. There's nothing else to do. It's like an easy it's like the easiest outlet, right? So I mean, it's not their fault, of course, but honestly, there should probably be like some like systems in place or some outlets for them as well. I mean, no one was ready for the pandemic either. Like, I mean, everyone's to blame, but no one's to blame at the same time, right? So, I mean, as long as we get through it sooner or later.
I mean, I feel like the reason why, or part of the reason why at least, why like people are sort of returning to their substance abuses, or why people are starting up in the first place, is because there's a lack of support in the community. So there was a study by the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction that sort of followed support centers throughout the pandemic. So when the pandemic first started, all the in-person support centers had to shut down. And that sort of really, messed up the people who relied on those systems, because they, in turn, instead of getting support, they started going back to their own ways. But I think the sad thing is that even when online support systems started to open up, there is still, a huge rise in substance abuse, because people didn't find that they got that same quality of support that they did when they were going to in-person centers. So it did have some sort of positive effects on substance levels, but it's still definitely a major problem.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Oh, sorry, man. I'm interrupting you. I just want to say one thing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like a fact or anything, but I think the reason why online wasn't as good as in person is just we're social beings and we're eager to have social interactions, and like a screen time is nothing compared to human interactions and being outside, and just all those little things really add up, I would say. Sorry, Marianne. I cut you off there.
No worries. But it kind of goes back to psychology and just being in the same environment in which you used to take drugs in or used to do other bad habits. And then since we're at home, we don't really have the opportunity to leave that environment and go somewhere else to seek rehabilitation. So constantly being in that environment and triggering all these cues for your body to crave a drug or to crave your need to do a habit, to say, it's just probably the reason behind all these spikes in drug uses and probably overdoses and stuff.
No, like what I was going to add was that let's say you're always at home and you always have the same environmental cues, then that whatever somebody's usual dose is, their tolerance is going to go up as their body expects these substances to come in at a certain time in a certain environment. However, though, if you were to think like ahead and things get lifted at some point and people get accustomed to certain doses, then in a different environment, there's a higher risk of overdosing. And I think that's something that maybe somebody has to look into it, but so far I haven't heard much of that. But it's something that you might have to think ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I think it all kind of falls back on like things to do and things we can do throughout the pandemic. Sorry, but I think a big thing that affected me, and I'm sure all of you guys too, is gyms being closed. Like people, like you can work out at home, but it's just not the same, right? I'm sure you guys experienced this, and gyms and just working out in general just gives everyone that like boosted productivity, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to be honest, like I did find a lot of enjoyment from like finding other ways to exercise, like exercising outside, going for walks and runs outside. Like that was all fine, but I really, really enjoyed going to the gym too, because it was kind of it was just that break, that break from work, that I could just go to the gym, see the staff that I always see the people that I always see at the gym too, the regulars, and just enjoy myself and talk to everyone around me. Like it was so necessary, I found, and I'm really, really sad that they're closed. I hope they open soon.
Yeah, a synonym to that is kind of with studying. Like you study at home, but it's not the same if you're just studying at the library where you see everybody else studying. You kind of know your way around, and you know who's usually there, like you said, regulars and whatnot, and just knowing your place around it. Just even walking there, so like a break in between. It's something that is hard to do now when you can't really make a difference between like workspace and your life, especially if you work in your room where like your bed's right beside where you're supposed to be doing work. It's the line that differentiates work and life becomes very hazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential to not do your work in your room. That has like been proven with multiple studies that is horrible, horrible, horrible. It's like even if you study in your bed, some studies found that it would be harder for you to sleep because your brain is like confused if it should sleep, if it should study, if it's trying to focus. So please, if there's one thing that you changed during the pandemic, maybe do that for sure. I don't know how you guys studied, but I was just in my basement and it was kind of depressing because there was no windows. I would just be like in this dark, gloomy basement all day long studying, and it was a lot for sure.
Oh, I completely agree. Like, I'm in my room with my textbooks on one side, but on the other side, I have my TV, I have my phone, I have everything else that I like around me. So if I was going to have a choice, like, what am I going to do right now? Am I going to go open my dusty textbooks and work, or am I going to go watch TV or go watch YouTube? Like, the choice is pretty obvious for me. And it's usually, spoiler, it's usually, not opening up the textbooks. It's usually, actually doing things I want to do. And that actually does, like, lower my productivity. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. There was a study that actually just came out of Brown University on the switch from in-person learning to online learning. And when they randomized individuals who learned in person and learned online, they found that individuals who were studying completely online were a lot less motivated. Their grades slipped. Their productivity fell. And yeah, these are just a few of the negative impacts that online learning or the switch to online learning could have on people who were otherwise used to an in-person setting.
Yeah, just as a personal anecdote, just like even seeing a sunny day would just destroy my productivity because I just want to be outside and just do something other than studying. I don't know if anyone could touch upon that at all.
For me, like the warm weather has always been associated with like going on a vacation back home and seeing my family and stuff. So it's like my body and my mind is kind of hardwired to just not do anything during the summer. And it's even now, like when I was driving back home, it was like 27 degrees or something. I was like, man, I really want to get like ice cream and go to like the water and sit down and just have a good time with myself. But I have to come home and I know I have a bunch of things to do tonight. So it's just all of these challenges.
Yeah, you could also look at it like the other way. Like these are all like exercises to kind of build some discipline, but they are pretty hard exercises, I would say.
Like, you mean sort of just like things that we could take with us after the pandemic?
Yeah, like for example, you're given a choice. If you do the one choice enough times, you kind of like more inclined to it eventually, kind of classical conditioning yourself.
I mean, yeah, I can sort of speak on that. Like, feel like, are you talking about when when the pandemic's over, um, and you're faced with some sort of dilemma, like, for example, am I going to do my work, or am I going to go do something more enjoyable than that? Like, are you saying that because you've sort of trained yourself to sort of work in like unfavorable conditions, that you're going to be better at that in the future?
Yeah, or like kind of exercising, making mindful decisions. When you're given a choice that is clearly the best course of action, or another one that is just clearly like more entertaining, which one would you take? Kind of just exercising yourself to try to take the better decision under certain circumstances.
That's true, actually. I kind of like that. It's sort of like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, we're not really seeing this whole positive side of the pandemic, but it's actually teaching us a lot of valuable lessons that we're going to be seeing in the future. I think we could actually benefit from them. So far we've talked about, like, mental health during the pandemic, ways that it sort of affected us, and now I feel like we should, maybe end on potential coping strategies and talk about what has helped us so far. So like I know we've sort of we've talked about distracting yourself, doing hobbies that you enjoy. Another thing that has really, really helped me throughout this pandemic is my friends. They have just been a lifeline. And I know that during the lockdown, it's hard to see them, but I'm a huge FaceTimer. I'm a huge texter and caller. So I feel like every spare moment that I have that I'm not doing work or something like that, like I'm on FaceTime with my friends. And that has just helped me so much. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that's great. Honestly, being home studying, I think the best coping mechanism was probably just being around my family. I think getting closer to them was pretty special. Like, of all the negative things that could have happened and happened throughout the pandemic, I think something that's always been like just solid was just my family and them being there for me at all times. So I really am happy that I got closer to my family for sure.
That's really nice to hear.
For me, it's been just learning not to take a lot of things seriously. Like just knowing when you should take things seriously and when you should just like lean back and let things play out how they should, instead of like trying to micromanage every small thing that's going on.
And that's sort of like back to what Thea was talking about like those lessons that you can take after the pandemic. So it's good that now you sort of figured out ways to just let things happen naturally and not try to micromanage. So that's a really important skill, actually.
Yeah. So, is there any coping mechanisms or positive things you've taken from COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it's just things that we already discussed, not being hard on yourself, knowing when enough is enough regarding work or even like messing around. Like you said, getting close with family, it's just all these things that, even though it's an very unfortunate event that we're going through, there's many things that you could have done within this time. And even if you haven't, that's also all right, You don't always have to do something, just like we've been saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. Well, this has been our first podcast about mental health during the pandemic for students and also kind of just for everyone. I encourage everyone, if you're going through any tough times, please reach out to any hotlines or anything or any systems that you need to. There's always things there for you. We will link it in the description for any YouTube watchers. And thank you for the CMFU for allowing us to be on their radio station, 93.3. Thank you guys, everyone, for listening. Have a great, awesome day.
It starts with a look, with all that it took. I feel like I had too much champagne. It starts with a touch,